All of the peripheral devices or external devices that we use connect through different ways, from mice to keyboards to webcams to monitors. There's a bunch of different connections, different ports, and different interfaces. These types of interfaces consist of these. First, we have the USB types, A, B, and C, and multiple versions from 2.0 to 3.0 to 3.1 to 3.2, all the way to USB 4.0. Then we have video ports. These are for our monitor connections. We have HDMI, DisplayPort, VGA, and DVI. From there, we have Thunderbolt, which is a very unique type of modern day connection, which we're going to explore in far more detail. For audio, speakers, headphones, things like that, we can use 3.5 millimeter optical connections or even Bluetooth. For Ethernet, we have RJ45. For wireless input and output devices, we can use Bluetooth, NFC, or RF. And for common adapters, we can use a wide variety of different connections. Adapters are useful when we're lacking a connection on our device. So for example, let's say that we have a wide variety of different USB connections. We can use USB connections in order to connect devices that aren't USB through some sort of adapter. We're going to be talking about all of these different interfaces and more. Just keep in mind, people call these either connections, ports, or interfaces. There's a wide variety of terms, and you can use any of them interchangeably. Just understand when we're talking about these, we're mainly talking about some form of connection in order to get something working with our computer, laptop, or our other device. Let's dive into it now by talking about USB types and versions. USB is used to connect devices of all types to modern day desktop and laptop computers. Whether you're using a mouse, a keyboard, a printer, there's so many different types of devices out there nowadays that use USB. The first type of USB is USB-A. This is an older connector. We have USB-B, USB-C, which is a more modern connector, and then we also have different USB versions. Now, the types of USB are our connectors. Now, our USB types are our physical connectors. For example, this is a USB-C connection here with a USB-A connection. At the very end, like that, this is a little bit bigger, and this is our very, very thin connection here. That's USB-C. Now, that is a connection. The actual USB version dictates the USB speed. So for example, this connection could be, say, USB 3.1, 3.2, or USB 4. This is just a physical connector. The actual speed is dictated by the USB version. Same thing with this. This is the USB type or the USB connector, but this could, same thing. It could be USB 3, 3.1, whatever it is. So keep in mind, connectors and versions, they're a little bit different, and we're going to expand on that now. USB versions is USB 2.0 and USB 3.0. They're very similar looking. They're just different types of connections, and they have different types of speed. USB 2.0 is by far the oldest. It's not necessarily legacy, but it's starting to get there. In terms of speed, you can get up to 480 megabytes per second. It uses USB 2.0. It's commonly used in keyboards, mice, flash drives, and things like that. And it's really not great for data transfer. It's mainly for connections for like mice and keyboards. In terms of USB 3.0, this speed is up to 5 gigabytes per second, so that's 10 times faster than USB 2.0. This is mainly used for external drives, USB hubs, and things of that nature. Because of the speed, it's also great for file transfers and external storage. USB 3.1 and 3.2 is another USB version. It's extremely fast, around 10 to 20 gigabytes per second, and it's common for high-speed storage devices, and it's commonly used as well for solid state drives and docking stations. From here, the last version of USB we have is USB 4.0. This has up to 40 gigabytes per second, and it uses Thunderbolt. So it's useful for a wide variety of different devices because it not only supports power and data transfer, it also supports video. So for example, you could have a USB slot on your laptop, and you could plug in a USB 4.0, and it could transmit everything you need: video, data, USB connections for a mouse or a keyboard, things like that. So USB 4.0 is especially very powerful for docking stations, because you can have a docking station that has all your monitors connected, all your devices, and you can plug in one USB-C into your computer, and that's all your connections in one. So it's extremely powerful, especially for docking stations and for monitors. And these are our physical connections. We have USB-A, USB-B, and USB-C. Just keep in mind, USB-A has that wider and larger end for connection. USB-B looks like this, and USB-C looks like this. For the Tech Plus exam, you don't necessarily need to understand all of the speeds. Just understand USB 4 is the fastest. USB-C is one of the most common types of connections for today's world. This is the USB-C. It's common on Android phones and different types of devices. Just understand for now though, USB-C is the fastest, USB-B and USB-A are older. Video ports or connections are useful for connecting our laptop, computer, or other device directly to a display device, like a monitor, any other sort of external display like a TV or even a projector. These different types of ports and connections, well, they determine how video signals are transmitted, the maximum resolution that's actually supported, and whether audio can be carried along with video. HDMI, or high definition multimedia interface, is by far one of the most common forms of display connections. This allows both audio and video to be sent through one connection. It connects computers, TVs, monitors with both sound and with video as well. DisplayPort is the next one. This is a newer form of connection, and this is more for high quality video. It's mainly used with computer monitors and with any sort of higher refresh rate displays. VGA is next. This is an older one, and this is for analog video for monitors and other visual connections. It's, again, mainly used for older computers to connect to monitors or projectors. The fourth and final one is DVI, or digital visual interface. Just like VGA being more of a legacy or older connector, DVI is an older connector as well. It's a little bit better quality than VGA, but it's still not nearly as used today with as commonly used as DisplayPort, HDMI, or even Thunderbolt, which we're going to cover next. So mainly just understand HDMI and DisplayPort. There are two new types of connections that are used for modern day video connection. VGA and DVI, those are older connections. This is what each one looks like as well. Also remember, VGA has 15 pins. It uses a 15-pin connection, so there's 15 pins in a row. DVI does not use 15 pins as a connection. Next up is Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is a high-speed connection interface, and it supports data, video, and power through one cable. Thunderbolt has revolutionized the way that we make connections. So Thunderbolt is extremely powerful because it carries almost everything you can need through one simple cable. It's most common with docking stations. You'll see Thunderbolt used across many different docking stations where you connect all your devices to one docking station. That docking station has a Thunderbolt USB-C cable that it can then plug into a USB-C port on a laptop or computer. It's extremely powerful again, and it can be used for monitors, external storage, docking stations, which can then be used for almost all of our devices, because docking stations tend to have multiple ports or interfaces where you can plug almost any connection into, and then you can use that docking station through Thunderbolt to connect to your laptop or your computer. So this is what Thunderbolt looks like from a port or an interface perspective. And from an actual connection or cable perspective, this is what Thunderbolt looks like. You can see the little Thunderbolt here, and you can see it uses that USB-C style connector. So it goes USB-C to USB-C. Next up, we have audio ports, 3.5 millimeters, and optical. Audio ports are just for that. They're for audio and sound. They determine audio quality, compatibility, and whether sound is sent through analog or through a digital signal. So a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, we don't really use those on phones as much. On the old phones, we used to have a 3.5 where you could use headphones. Nowadays, most phones just have Bluetooth, or if you need to, you can connect through the USB-C port or the Apple port on your phone. So the first here is 3.5 millimeters. This was used quite a bit ago on older phones, and it was used on older computers. Nowadays, we normally use Bluetooth on phones for headphone connections or for audio. Most phones also have a speaker, so we don't necessarily need that audio port. And if you absolutely have to connect your headphones physically, you can usually connect them through the phone's charging port. So that is one possibility. Next up is optical audio, and it uses a light actually to transmit sound. So this is more for higher quality sound with less interference. Again, 3.5 millimeter audio jack, it's not used as much nowadays. You can still use it, but it's not nearly as used. And optical audio, it's really only used on very high-end systems. These are not common forms of audio, but you should just be aware of them, because again, most people nowadays will just use Bluetooth to connect to headphones. Like for example, if you use AirPods, you would pop your AirPods out and you'd connect directly to your phone or to your laptop through Bluetooth. In terms of internal network connection, an Ethernet cable, or RJ45 cable, as it's sometimes called, can be used for wired networking connections in order to get a laptop, a computer, or other device onto a network. Even printers can actually use network cables, so it can allow, again, computers, printers, laptops, whatever device you're trying to connect to an internal network through a wired form of access. The other flip side to this is just using something like Wi-Fi, where you don't need a wire. One thing to note here, there are different types of standards for Ethernet cables. There's what's known as CAT, Cat4, Cat5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. Those are out of the scope for this video, but just keep in mind, there's different types of network cable speeds. RJ45 is just this cable here that connects you right to the network, and there are different types of network speeds, but you don't really need to know that for right now. Just keep in mind, if you go forward in the future, especially with networking, this is something that you will need to know. You'll need to know about the CAT system for network speed, and that dictates how fast the connection is, and if it has power over Ethernet as well, also known as PoE. Don't worry about that too much for now, though. Next up, we have wireless input output, Bluetooth, NFC, and RF. Wireless input output, Bluetooth, NFC, RF, these are all used to connect devices to something without a physical connection and with no cables needed. Bluetooth is short range wireless. We already talked about this previously, 20 to 30 feet range, around 10 meters. NFC or near field communication, it's more for payment. So for example, if you have Apple Pay on your phone, you can tap to pay. If you have a credit card, you tap to pay. That's what that is. That's NFC or near field communication. It's mostly just used for payments though. RF as well, for radio frequency. This is waves to transmit data through the air wirelessly. Don't worry too much about RF, but just keep in mind this is a form of wireless input and output or wireless connection. In addition to calling these input output, you could also just call them connections as well, or wireless connections. They all essentially connect devices and allow for data transfer and for us to use devices wirelessly. This is an example of Bluetooth headphones, earbuds, different types of keyboards, mouse. You can use these for wireless connections through Bluetooth. Near field communication, this is something like a credit card or again, a phone using Apple Pay, or if you have an Android using something like Google Pay, you could tap and use near field communication for payments. It's incredibly useful, but the range on it isn't super far just because you have to tap or be very, very close to whatever you're trying to transmit data through. Same thing, this is radio frequency, not commonly used. You can have certain devices that have it with mouse and things like that, but it's not necessarily as common as the other two. In terms of adapters, we talked about these earlier, but adapters essentially allow us to take one connection and turn it into a completely different connection. So if we have USB-C, we could turn that into HDMI. If we have USB, we could potentially use a USB slot for Ethernet. If we have HDMI, we can convert it to VGA, or we could convert VGA to HDMI. So all adapters do is they allow us to take one connection and turn it into a different connection. You might be wondering, why is this useful? Well, if you have older devices, if you have a laptop that only has certain types of ports or connection interfaces, you would want to start using an adapter. So adapters, they're just useful because they allow us, again, to take one connection and use it for a completely different connection and kind of bridge that gap. Here's some examples, USB-C to HDMI. So we could have a HDMI connection or HDMI cable that we plug in. Then we could plug in the USB-C. That way we could have an HDMI turned into USB-C. This is pretty common, especially for monitors. Here on this USB to Ethernet one, we could plug in a network cable, and then that network cable, if we don't have a network jack or port or interface on our laptop or computer, we can route it through, and then we could use USB instead. HDMI to VGA, we could have a VGA connecting into this adapter here. Then that would transmit the signal into HDMI, which would let us use an older VGA cable on a modern day device through an HDMI connection. So we've went over a wide variety of different peripheral devices and how they connect in this section. So wrapping this video up, we've covered all of the different types of connections and interfaces that you're going to encounter out in the real world and when working with tech. I wanted to recap a few things here because I think earlier in the video, I didn't make this super clear. So an interface is essentially the same thing as a port. It's what we plug our connection or cable into if we're using a wired or a physical connection. So for example, we will have ports on our laptops and on our desktops. You can see here, these are all ports. Our ports or interface is what the cable actually plugs into. So for example, we could have a USB port, we could have a USB-C port, we could have an HDMI port right there. All that to say, what these do is they allow us to plug things in, essentially. That's what a port or an interface is. You'll hear the term interface or port used interchangeably, but just understand it's what's actually getting something plugged into it. A connection or a cable is the actual cable that then plugs into that interface or port. So you can see there's a wide variety of different types of connections or cables, and we have corresponding ports or interfaces for those connection or cables to actually plug into. Those are incredibly important to know. I know those concepts can be a little bit confusing, but you've learned a lot in this video. Let's keep going and learning more.